What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so before I get into this video, I want to give a shout out to Daryl for his contribution to the channel. You know what I'm saying? I want to thank Daryl a lot for his support of this channel and his contributions to this channel. You know what I'm saying? And I want to thank everybody that contributes to this channel, even if it's not monetary. You know, just your words of encouragement, your positivity, your interaction with me. You know what I'm saying? Just, your video requests, all that shit. You know what I'm saying? Keeps me fresh, keep me motivated to do these videos, for you guys, man. And I really appreciate it. You know what I'm saying? And we're all going through some trying times right now with what's going on. You know what I'm saying? But we'll get through this. So, all right, this is the B-side of the two-parter. Yesterday, I did a video talking about what if Akeem Olajuwon played in the 1950s and 60s for the Boston Celtics. In this video, I want to talk about what if Bill Russell played for the Houston Rockets in the 1980s and 1990s. I had to re-record this because I had got to the point where I was getting so detailed, the video was running way too fucking long. So I'm going to have to kind of quicken this video up a little bit. But it's in my nature to be nuanced. So let me just start from the beginning. First of all, if we're going to do this alternate timeline thing, instead of him being born in 1934, let's have him being born the same year Akeem Olajuwon was born, 1963. That makes a huge difference in so many different ways. First of all, he was born in Louisiana. And in real life, Bill Russell experienced a lot of racism. All right, a lot of racism. He grew up in Jim Crow. He grew up in the heart of, the solid South. Louisiana is one of the most racist states at that time. It was a terrible time to be an African American in that state. By contrast, by the 1960s, we were going through the Civil Rights Movement, Voting Rights, Act, Civil Rights Act, Johnson administration. Systemic segregation was coming to an end in the South, although in many states there were still some racist policies that held all the way through the early 1970s. It's called the massive resistance. You saw that in the South, including my state of Virginia. It was a counteraction to the Civil Rights Movement, but ultimately the massive resistance failed. But still, Bill Russell, if he was born in the 1960s, grew up in the 1970s, he still would have experienced some level of racism, but I don't think it would have been to the extent that he experienced in real life. All right, so having said that, these are some of the differences. I think his personality still would have been alpha male. I think he still would have been a leader. I think he still would have been as competitive as he was in real life, in the same vein as a Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird. But I don't think he would have been as bitter about that, racism. I don't think he would have been as hate-filled. I don't think he would have been as nasty as he could be sometimes. You know what I'm saying? I think it would have been a little bit lessened. I think the trauma of racism wouldn't have been quite as profound with Bill Russell in this alternate situation. I also think that it's probably likely that his family stays in Louisiana. In real life, his family moved to seek a better opportunity for themselves and Bill. They moved from Louisiana to California. I think in this situation, with the improvement of life for his family, I think Bill Russell's father stays in Louisiana. There have been more economic opportunities for his family and for young Bill as he grew up himself and his mother. Unfortunately, Bill Russell's mother passed away when she was when he was 12 years old. So in this situation, that would be 1975. unfortunately. Um, so since he stays in the South, I think that Bill Russell probably goes to school in the South. In real life, he went to school. I think it was what was it, San Francisco or something like that. I think in this scenario, he might go to, let's say, I don't know, LSU, Louisiana Tech, maybe. I don't know. Um, Somewhere, maybe some school like that. I think that initially he's not as heavily touted because he wasn't the most offensively sound player. He wasn't the most uh, fundamentally sound guy. But I think his overall play as he's in college um, begins to take note of scouts. I think scouts begin to notice the physical ability. Got to remember something about Bill Russell. Man. I know that now he's this old man who walks with a cane. It's going to happen to all of us if we live that long. Um, but got to remember that when Bill Russell was a young man, this guy was ranked like he was an all-around athlete. He was, a high jumper. This guy was the number, what was he? The number 2 ranked high jumper in the world at one point before he went pro. So this guy would have been an all-around athlete. I think that the way that he would have been marketed as this phenomenal athlete, all right, that would have been his thing. Like he would have been looked at as like, wow, this guy, is such a phenomenal athlete. I think he would have been a little bit more hyped in that situation. And I think at college, whatever college he went to, I think that he would have been known for his defensive ability. He would have been known for his rebounding ability and his leadership skills and his shot blocking ability. Uh, you know, I think that in this situation, you can't call him the pioneer shot blocking because I think that would have developed eventually without Bill Russell in the 50s. I think somebody would have gotten the bright idea to implement that in the NBA. But I think that his shot blocking would have been pioneering still because of his basketball IQ. And his basketball IQ was off the charts. Uh, Unlike in real life, where you still had de facto segregation in the NBA, where Bill Russell was the first black superstar, but before Bill Russell, black players, no matter how talented they were tokens and they didn't get a lot of minutes. And this situation is totally different. And I do think that in this situation, with the big man still ruling the NBA, the same situation, 1984, the Houston Rockets draft Bill Russell, first overall pick. All right. Um, so what will be different this time? What will be different? What will be similar? Well, I still see a front line with Bill Russell and Ralph Sampson being very formidable. In some ways, you could say that they would be more, actually, in some ways, they could be more compatible because Bill Russell was not a scorer by instinct. You know, he was a defensive player. He much preferred controlling the boards, shot blocking, interior defense. You know what I'm saying? His game was more um, running the floor. You know what I'm saying? This guy was a tremendous athlete. Uh, I could see Samson scoring, shooting the ball more in this situation. But unfortunately, I still see his body breaking down. That's what just happened to him. All right. So I can see Ralph Sampson averaging more like 26, 27 points, maybe in this scenario. Um, I think that as phenomenal as Bill Russell can be, I Don't know if he would still beat out Jordan for Rookie of the Year. I could see Bill Russell putting up something like in his rookie year, maybe like 14 points, uh, and maybe 12 and a half rebounds. Maybe his rookie year, maybe about 3 block shots a game. I'll give him about 3 block shots a game. I think he plays like, yeah, something like in that range. All right. Because he's filling out the NBA. You know, he's still trying to get adjusted, acclimated. I think his second year is when he gets everything down, when he gets the nuances of guys defensively, how to check guys, um, guys' tendencies. Once he gets a picture of every guy and kind of memorize people's moves, I think his second year is when he really um, steps up. I also think there's going to be eventually pressure on him to improve offensively. As we all know, Elijah Wan was a skilled scorer. Bill Russell is not. Um, I think eventually it's going to be pressure on Bill Russell to develop some basic moves. And I could see him maybe developing a jump hook, which I think he had in real life anyway. But I think he would have like had a I think he would have developed a reliable jump hook. Uh, Maybe you know what I'm saying, some type of, I don't know, some type of spin move to the basket, uh, and maybe a couple of them, maybe like 2 or 3 moves. And I can see him also developing like a Charles Oakley like 12-foot jumper. You know what I'm saying? Something like that. He's not going to be a great scorer. He's not Elijah Wan. But I can see him pushing his average up to 17, maybe 18 points a game. That's pretty good. Um, but I can see him a typical Russell year being like, let's say, 17.5 points, 14.5 rebounds, 4 blocks per game, uh, 2.4 steals, uh, you know, 4 assists. Yeah, I can see him putting up some phenomenal numbers. I could see this guy winning shit. Minimum 5 Defensive Player of the Year awards in his career. Minimum. Probably if he plays from, let's say he plays, let's say he plays longer than he did in real life with modern medicine and all that type of shit, fitness and all that. Let's say he plays for the 18 years that Elijah Wan played. Yeah, I could see him winning at least 5 Defensive Player of the Year awards, at the very least. All right, probably more in the range of 6 to 7. I'm being honest. I just think he was that phenomenal defensively. Um, he could literally guard from the 1 to the 5. The only thing too that I'm thinking about, it's going to have to be there's going to have to be more scorers around him. He doesn't have the offensive game to carry a team like Elijah Wan did those years, especially 94, 95. He doesn't have that type of game. Now he's a big time clutch performer, whether it's getting clutch rebounds, block shots, or sometimes stepping up and scoring. Because he was capable of having some big scoring games. You know, he might have, in real life, he has a couple of 30-point, 20 rebound, or 31-point, 30 rebound games. Like I said, rebounds will be a little bit lower because of the era he's playing in, where it's more of a defensive era. The pace is starting to slow down by the mid 90s, as far as the NBA is concerned. But it's going to be pressure on him to have more offensive players around him. In this situation, now hear me out, I could actually see Charles Barkley going to Houston before Phoenix because he would be perfect. He would be a complimentary. They would control the boards. Number one, Charles Barkley could, take up the slack offensively that Bill Russell wouldn't have. Okay, that Bill Russell would create. Like I said, even with Russell averaging 15, 16 points in this scenario, he still would need someone to offset his lack of scoring there. Elijah was putting up 25, 26, 27 points a game at that time. So Charles Barkley would help in that situation. Okay. Charles was still closer to his prime in 92. All right. As opposed to when he joined him in 96. And I think that they would still need someone else on the perimeter. They would need some other scorer, I think. Maybe somebody, not necessarily like some great player, but somebody that could just shoot. And I wonder, in this scenario whether they could have gotten somebody like Eddie Johnson earlier, who eventually joined the team off the bench. Maybe it's somebody like Eddie Johnson, in addition to the other guys that they eventually had. You know what I'm saying? Uh, you know, Kenny Smith and everybody else that was there. But I do think they would need somebody else. They would need a couple other players. Um, yeah, I think a guy like Eddie Johnson would be perfect. You know what I'm saying? I think he'd be perfect in this scenario. So, does Bill Russell win 11 titles in this scenario? No. No, the NBA was far too competitive. There was far more teams at the time. The Western Conference was lit up. I don't see him winning 11 championships. Uh, do the Rockets still win back-to-back titles in 94, 95? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I can still, but I'll say this though. If this team, let's say in 92, they acquired Charles Barkley, right? Which would have meant they would have had to give up something. So let's say they gave up Otis Thorpe and I think they had Otis Thorpe then, the Rockets. Let's say they gave up Otis Thorpe and Maxwell and uh, I don't know, something else, somebody else, maybe in some money, cash, and some draft picks, whatever. All right. Um, if that team had Barkley, Bill Russell, I'm trying to remember that lineup at the time. Barkley, Bill Russell. Let's say they had Eddie Johnson in the backcourt at shooting guard, and let's say they had Kenny Smith at the point, and I don't know who's at the three. Who was Tracy Murray there at the time? I don't know, but let's say they have that team and they make it to the finals in '93. Can we really see the Bulls beating that team? First of all, let's say something. Let's be honest. I don't see Michael Jordan driving to the basket as much. You know what I'm saying? With Bill Russell there, that ain't gonna happen. Um, so the the free the open lanes to the basket, that's going to be shut off. The Rockets are going to dominate the boards, which if they dominate the boards, it's going to be difficult for me to see Chicago beat the Rockets in this scenario. So I do think the Rockets win a championship in '93. Um, If they were to play the Knicks in '94, it's hard for me to see the Knicks beating that team in '94. Um, and if Bill Russell could contain Chamberlain at times, I don't see why he would not be able to at least contain a young Shaquille O'Neal. If Olajuwon was able to outplay Shaq, it's hard for me to see how Russell couldn't at least contain Shaq at times. You know what I'm saying? Um, I can see them potentially winning a three-peat from 92, 93 to 94, 95. Okay? Um, Charles Barkley started breaking down after the 95, 96 season. And, in real life, it's hard to say, man. It's really hard to say in this scenario. I think that Bill Russell would still be looked at as an all-time great player. He wouldn't have 11 titles, but I think he would have his fair share of NBA championships. I think he'd have his fair share of MVPs. I don't know if he would won 4 of them, but he would have won a lot of them, probably at least 2. I think he would won a couple of championships, like I said, possibly a three-peat in that scenario. Um, but the thing about it is, it could close up this video. I think he would be much more respected by this younger generation. You know what I'm saying? They wouldn't always shit on him about he played against a bunch of white guys, which is bullshit anyway. I think that he would get his finally he would get his just due as the superb basketball player that he was. You know what I'm saying? Um, Bill Russell was an all-time great, and I think in this scenario he would be looked at as possibly uh, the GOAT. And I'll tell you why. Because he wouldn't have these cheap shots against him as far as him not having played anybody but a bunch of white guys. That wouldn't be part of the argument anymore. He would have played for 18 years. He would have probably averaged, he would have led the league in rebounding almost every year. Okay? The only guy that might, in my opinion, challenge him some years would be Dennis Rodman. But if it's not Rodman, it's going to be him. It's going to be Rodman some years, then some years it's going to be Bill Russell. Okay? And a difference between Rodman and Russell is Dennis did not show the same dominance in the playoffs when it came to rebounding. I think that, like I said, Bill Russell was a marquee performer, and I could see some games in the playoffs where Bill Russell would just absolutely dominate Chicago's front line. Like, I could see some games where, like, you're talking about the late 90s Bulls. Like, let's say they go to the finals in the late 90s against the later Bulls, right? I could see Bill Russell having, like, games with 37 points, 29 rebounds, you know what I'm saying, 11 assists. I could see him having triple doubles easily when they were actually recordable. I could see him getting triple doubles. I can see it. Like, I can see him having games where he could have 12 points, 19 rebounds, 10 assists, easy. If he was actually trying to go for numbers like guys are doing today, and not just having it come like just from fluidly. So, yeah, I could see him being, at the end of the day, a 2-time MVP. I could see him winning 5 to 6 Defensive Player of the Year awards. I could see him winning 3 championships, maybe more. You know what I'm saying? Maybe 5. Maybe 5. Um, yeah, I could just see him arguably being in that GOAT conversation. But what they're going to do is, as they do with Kareem, they're going to talk about the skill aspect of it. They're going to talk about the fact that he didn't score a lot of points, even though he probably would finish close to 20,000 career points just because of the amount of games he played in. But yeah, I could see Bill Russell being more respected by this younger generation. So that's it. That's pretty much it, man. I think that greatness is greatness, no matter what generation you're playing in. And Bill Russell would be a great force in today's NBA, or in this scenario, 80s and 90s. But tell me what you guys think.